Hi there. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another chit chat with the Black Opinionated Woman, also known as a Bo. I am the Black Opinionated Woman. So let's get right on into it. We're going to talk about something today. This is if you are new to my channel, I talk about hold on, let me go through my whole spiel. If you're new to my channel, I talk about three things: Black woman, Black culture, and anything related to middle age. So today, if you entered into this video, you selected this particular thumbnail. So there's a baby carriage and then there's a briefcase if you're career oriented. So, of course, I like to have a little fun with my thumbnails, but so it's kind of like, do you need to choose between a baby carriage or your career? Okay, so let me see. Let me go back to my situations here. So this is what we're going to talk about today. Can women have it all? I don't anticipate this being long because I don't want this to be long. Um, Number one, I'm kind of like irritated that like the volume out in my family room is so loud right now, and I'm like, why does it have to be that loud? Anyway, but I want to talk about this. Yeah, I was actually, so I've been home the last couple of days. I haven't been working the last couple of days. So I actually had some time today. I had coffee with a neighbor. And then I came home, took care of some house stuff, and then I finally got on YouTube and I was looking up something on middle age. I forgot what it was. It was something random. But I ran across this thumbnail. Oh, let me take this off. I ran across several people talking about you know, being childless after 40, after 50, choosing not to have children. And I thought it was really interesting. So I kind of like listened to a couple of them. I don't know if I listened to all of them in totality because, I was wrapped up in some other things. But I just want to, I have like three main points I want to talk about today. So the first thing I want to get into is choosing career. Now, the title was Can Women Have It All? Right? It's a really interesting question. Can we have it all? So I'm going to first start off with if you choose career. So I wrote a few notes. Um, for those women who are choosing their career, that's kind of like a loaded thing. It's kind of like, are you choosing it for now or are you choosing it permanently, right? For those who are choosing career for now and they're like postponing starting a family, let me just bring out a couple of points. I didn't even look up any statistics, right? I just wanted to have a conversation. One, there's a time limit on the golden eggs that you harvest, right? So you spend a lot of time building that career, building that brand for yourself, that name recognition, that um all the things that come with building a successful career. But there's this trade-off, right? Because there's a time limit on women who can build families too. um I'm not talking about all of the options yet, right? Although they are viable options, I'm talking about you personally having children, getting married, that whole thing. And yes, I know the definition of family has changed in recent times, and how you go about acquiring family, whether you have children on your own, whether you adopt, whether you have a surrogate, whatever that means. Okay. But I'm just talking about and I say this with earmarks, the traditional way of having a family. You get married, you have children, you actually grow the baby. What I find is for those women who choose their career, right? Oftentimes people will label them as cold, um, not motherly, all these things. And I don't necessarily think that's 100% true, but I do understand why people will come up with that notion. And I'm going to circle back to that in a moment. I think also, oh, I can't get the words out. Also, women who typically choose career are typically running in different circles, very high octane, very busy, very fast paced. Maybe those careers require a lot of your time, a lot of cycles. Now, I'm gonna let me circle back to people may think you're cold and all these other things. I graduated undergrad with my degree in engineering. I went into the military. Okay, I was an officer in the United States Air Force. I went through my training school. Actually, I had to go through two because they were like, "Oh, you're an engineer, so we need you to have a specialty." I went through two training schools, but at this point in time, I'm in my early 20s. I was about 22, 23 years old. Um, and then I started living all around the world. And I've seen some things, I've experienced some things. Um, I remember because I was a highly sought after professional, I was in a career field, I was on a career path that was needed. Um, it was competitive, it was all these things, but I excelled. Okay. I was a junior officer. Back in the day, it helped that I was cute and smart. I was pretty, I was smart, I was fit, all these things. So I had a different set of privileges. But the thing was, I worked really hard because my paranoia was high. And that's another conversation we can have another day about what it's like being in the military overseas. When I spent a total of 5 years and 3 months on active duty, and then I separated. I remember I got to the point. Now, I want you guys to understand this is during the time when this is like the Slobodan Milosevic era when they were it was mass graves and ethnic cleansing, and then there was the war in Iraq when the United States invaded Iraq. So these were highly charged times. Now I want you to stick with me for a minute because I'm trying to make sure I give you some context. I saw many women who were in the military, some attractive, some not. Not that that's important, but it kind of is when you're choosing mates, right? You had women who wanted to have a successful career. And during those times, when I saw women who wanted to have these successful careers, they became a type. Now, it could have been because I was in the military. It could have been because I spent quite a bit of time overseas. I spent time in Turkey, I spent time in Germany, and then I ended up back here in the United States when I separated. The women that I ran into, I can understand why people would say they were cold because they started out fun and we all have fun and all these other good things. And you can be highly successful and talented. But then it got to the point where at some point you start to have to make these decisions. And I remember I was in a position where I had to make several decisions. Okay. And I had spent time in Turkey, which was one of the best times I've ever spent. That's considered a remote. So you get your choice. Now, why not going to Germany? And because I spent time overseas. Like, so basically, I don't want to say I was a darling, but I kind of was, right? Because I was good at my job. Um, I was attractive and I had a good personality. And when you are in a situation such as that, you have the opportunity to choose positions that would further your career, further advance your career. And I remember before I was leaving Germany, they wanted to send me to Saudi Arabia. And I didn't want to go. They were like, but you're trained to do this, this, that, and the other. And I was like, I don't want to go. I mean, I will go because I'm forced to go. But let's make this clear. I just want to go back to the United States. I want to reconnect with my family, all these other things. I had to make a decision. I remember my commander said, look, you have you have the opportunity to go anywhere and do everything. This is what I recommend for your career. And I remember telling my commander, who actually happened to be a woman, I said, I don't think this is for me. Do you know what that's like to have to um, put a dagger in your career, so to speak? This isn't for me. And during that time, everyone was highly charged. Everyone was like, I love the USA. I mean, I enjoy being American. I love being American. I mean, not that it doesn't have any have its faults, but it was on, I don't want to say it was sabotage, but what I was doing was I was choosing what I wanted. They were like, well, why don't you want to choose X, Y, and Z? And I said to the commander, if I choose that, it's going to be really difficult for me to one day have a family or just to have a stable relationship. I'm going to be forced to be with only military personnel, because if I go to this particular location and excel and do these great things, I'm going to be shipped in a lot of places. I'm going to be forced to go what we call TDY, temporary duty assignment. And I don't want to constantly, I was doing a lot. I had to go TDY. I mean, look, I had been in the military for 5 years. I've been many places, done many things. And the commander at the time, who, by the way, wound up being a general. I don't know how far she went, but which general, but she wound up getting a star or many. I don't know. Um, she looked at me as if like, you're throwing away an opportunity. And I looked at it like I'm choosing a different path for my life, because I saw what women, at least during that time, you got to remember this was in the early 2000s. The women that I saw in the military, the ones who chose to really push that career, they became a certain type of woman. And I hate when people classify successful women as cold and all these other things. But you almost have to, I shouldn't say this, and I know people will disagree with me, but in some ways, you almost have to be a certain type of woman, at least during that time, to be successful. I mean, you can find an edge case to disprove what I'm saying, and I'm sure many people will disprove what I'm saying. I'm interested in hearing this commentary, but during that time, I had to make a choice. Do I want to choose another high octane assignment, which is going to force me to be gone a lot, or do I choose just a little bit of stability? And at that time, I had no children. I wound up um, breaking up with a guy that I was dating in the military, and it broke my heart, but I had to move on. I had to choose a different assignment. The women that I saw who were choosing their career, that's not to say that they don't have fulfilling and meaningful relationships. But number one, that's just my opinion. Hold on, let me put my situation out. In my opinion, it was really hard to find a gentleman that would follow you, okay? Or number two, you really had to buckle down. Like they became a lot harder. Um, and that's it's more like a protection mechanism. It's like a survival, whether they want to admit to it or not. So now, that's what I'm saying. When, if from my perspective, for those that I saw, now granted, I was in a different bubble because I was an officer in the United States Air Force. So choosing career versus choosing family. And there's all kinds of stereotypes that come with that. Now, we're going to move on to the next point. So I want you guys to catch this. So then there's different things that come with choosing motherhood and family. So there's a sacrifice you make in your career. Okay? There's a sacrifice. There was a period of time when my husband worked for himself, and while we were building up his wonderfulness, we focused really hard on creating generational wealth, because we will now have 4 children. He traveled a lot, all these other things. And my goal and my role was for stability and providing a foundation. One of the things that bugged me though was when I was focused on family, because I was a stay-at-home mom for 3 years. Actually, people stopped referring to me by my name. And I had a really difficult time with that. Like some women, their goal is to get married and have children and never work again. And I get it. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I just struggled with it because I became so and so's wife. I never had a name. I never had an identity. I never had any purpose other than just raising all these children. And what I found was, while I was focused on creating this foundation and stability for my family, I found that in those few years, slowly but surely, my skills were getting rusty. Let me take this off. My skills were getting rusty. And I worked so hard. I had gotten my master's. I got all these different like certifications, but my skills were getting rusty. So then I started thinking about all these other things, like the impact it took on our family unit in the beginning, the financial impact, my income. I went from being fully self supporting to having to surrender my career goals and aspirations for a period of time and putting my trust in my husband. And let me tell you something. Let me just hold on for a second. During that time frame, there was an adjustment for both of us. But that level of vulnerability while my husband was providing was so scary for me because I was fully self supporting. But in order for us to do what we needed to do at the time, I stayed home for those 3 years. It was rewarding and the worst experience of my life. And a lot of people don't like to talk about that. There are women who love it, like they flourish in that role, but I wasn't one of them. I struggled with self identification and self worth. Now, when I say that, it was primarily because I didn't feel comfortable as a stay at home mom. I didn't think I did it right. Like, I remember I would play tennis. I'm like, I'm living the life, right? And why was I so jacked up? I just felt like other women did it better. They made perfect meals. And you never know what goes on in people's homes, but like they just seem to have it together. But I was in the closet bawling my eyes out. I'm like, the kids are crazy. I can't keep the house like perfectly clean. So then we need the cleaner and all this other stuff. And I'm like, why can't I do this? I felt ashamed because at the end of the day, I was like, I don't want to be a stay at home mom. I wanted the option. I wanted the option of maybe part time. I thought I could do it and I couldn't. But also, let me be honest, it's really expensive with 4 children to stay at home. I think at the time they were all in private school and we wound up having to like make some adjustments and like, okay, they can't all go to private school. Let me just say this. After all that's said and done, I'm going to answer the question. Can women have it all? I don't think we can have it all at the same time. I don't. Someone may disagree with me, and I would love to hear your thoughts. I think for those who choose to have family, let me tell you something. There's a sacrifice. There's an edge case to everything. I'm not talking about the edge case where you're like a unicorn and you just you if you're trying to raise your children um and be present, see, like, it's hard, like, because some people don't have the option, right? It is hard to be, you know it's hard. But I think getting back to, because I don't want to bring stay-at-home mom versus working mom because that's a separate conversation. But for the women who are highly aspirational to do certain things, and there's a time frame for when you can like establish yourself within your career, but you're also battling this time frame of the golden eggs. It is difficult. It's kind of like that age old question that we all deal with. I am not unique. It's just, I'm not unique. What the heck was that? People always try to troll. So this is the thing. Like I said, I think it becomes one of those things. Can you have it all? I don't think you can have it all at once. Now, these are just my opinions. These are honest opinions. And the reason why I wanted to talk about that is because I think about the young women out here, 20s and 30s. I think for those of you who've seen other videos on my channel, you understand that I said that there's not enough representation from people who are 40 something and 50 something. So the younger generation, they're not getting that mentoring, they're not getting that representation, they're not seeing other women, they're not seeing the other side of the coin. They're not seeing these women get out here and they don't have to engage in minstrel behavior and doing these outlandish things because they're in searching for attention. These young women need to be aware of, okay, look, do you want to have children? Do recognize that it becomes difficult. And the fact of the matter is, when you're looking for a suitable mate, the older you get, the harder it is too, because at the end of the day, men in general do like that shiny penny, the younger version. That's not to say that you can't find love. I don't want to ever give out that notion. But the older you get, the harder it is. And not only that, to conceive becomes harder. It's just one of those things where it's like, I feel like honest conversations need to be had out there. And look, my story is just one story, but I will say this: there needs to be enough women out here on these various platforms having these conversations. So, I was kind of snobbish about it. I'm like, I'm not getting on YouTube and this, that, and the other. But the fact of the matter is, this is where the youth are. When I say the youth, I'm anybody basically younger than me. This is the environment where they live. And this is how we need to reach our youth. We don't have enough women having real discussions, showing the different sides of the coin, showing that, like, when I talk about makeup a lot, and I don't want to give the impression that I think makeup is bad, because it's not actually. But when I see women, and I look, we all have the ability to choose how we want to show up on here, but I feel like so many of us are showing up. I feel like we're something other. I don't know. I don't feel like we're not being maybe authentic. Maybe that's not even the right word, because maybe that is some people's authenticity. I just feel like we're not showing enough vulnerability. And that doesn't mean you have to tell all your business, because I'm not telling you mine. But we're not being honest. We're not talking about things like, for example, you know, I remember my husband and I had been through peaks and valleys in our marriages. I mean, we were looking at each other sideways, like, I don't know. In my mind, I'm like, I can do this by myself. You know, had no intentions of leaving, but we don't talk about, like, what does it really mean to build a foundation? We don't talk about what does it really mean to experience anxiety and panic in middle age. Or I know some people feel invisible. I don't really think I'm feeling invisible. That's because I have too much mouth. We don't talk about the scariness of dealing with your mortality, because you start, having these little niggling things that happen in your body. We don't talk about what it's like raising children for those who have children. We don't have enough conversations for those who are middle aged, talking to our youth about what it's like to be middle aged with no children, or maybe not a mate. What is it like to live alone? The pros and cons of that. The pros and cons of choosing career over family. I will say this: when I chose family for a period of time, and I struggled with it, not because I didn't want to have family. Earlier, when I was younger, I was like, I don't want all these kids. And then, you get married and you have 500 kids. And I think I dealt with, I don't know if it was resentment. Maybe I didn't on somebody's couch, but I remember there was a period of time I felt like I'm helping to build the family, because we're a team, right? But I'm like, but what about what I want? Like, what about what I want? And so when I first went back into the workforce, I went back into the workforce making significantly less than when I came out. Talk about humiliating. I went back into the workforce, and within a month or so, I was within my groove. And I'm like, I can run circles around these people. But because I had been out of the workforce for almost 3 years, I was given an insulting salary. Of course, I didn't last long because once I felt really comfortable and I left and went someplace else and started to rebuild, But, dealing with that, I always tell people that they should have agency in themselves, whatever that means. I don't, that looks different for everybody. I thought about things like, what would I do if my husband were to spontaneously blow up? Now, in previous videos, like I mentioned, that's not going to happen because we're going to die at the same time. And it's practically chiseled in concrete somewhere. Um, but what if something crazy happens? You know, um, People rely on life insurance or social security or all 3 cents in the account or whatever it is. So I thought about those things and I thought about like even if something like that were to happen, at some point I'd have to do something, right? Because you can plan, but I'm like, I'm too young. So what am I going to do? How am I going to take care of these kids? How am I going to take care of myself? We have a very comfortable lifestyle. What am I going to do? So anyway, getting back to answering the question, can women have it all? I do not think we can have it all at the same time. I don't. I think you have to make some decisions and make some sacrifices. And for those unicorns who were able to manage both, I mean, like kudos to you, but that's not everyone's reality. At some point, you have to think, what do I want? Do I want my career or do I want to focus for a period of time on family? Um, Now, at the ripe old age of 45, now I don't want a career at all. Now I'm trying to think about like how I can not do what I do, or maybe do it just part time. I don't know. It's not that I want to be a stay home mom or anything like that. I've been there, done that. But now it's a matter of like, okay, I'm just going through that midlife crisis when you're like, maybe I should be an artist. Whatever. Anyway, that's it. I just wanted to put that video out there because it's just something to think about. And if I happen to find somebody who's 30, 35, 25, or whatever, I just want you to know these are the kind of questions you have to think about. You need to be able to take care of yourself and be fully self-supporting, but yet and still, the fact of the matter is whether people want to believe it or not, we do have a a I don't want to say shelf life in terms of value, but we do have a certain amount of time if you want to have your own biological children. The average person is not like uber wealthy where they can just yank out their own eggs and have somebody else have the baby for them. That's not realistic for most people. I think most people can't just go do IVF, whether it's health issues or financial issues. Most people cannot simply just pay a surrogate. Did I say that already? That's not most people's reality. Reality is, if you're going to have children, you're probably going to have to, generally speaking, carry them yourself. And we don't talk about these things on these platforms, especially Black YouTubers. They tend to want to talk about 4C hair or wigs or something, and they want to talk about how to apply makeup. And we're not really, I mean, I think there's this push for some self-help stuff, right? Or self-care. But in womanhood in general, I just feel like my generation and those who are a little older than me, we are we're doing a disservice to women who are beneath, not beneath us, younger than us. There's not enough representation out here. So our youth, they don't have anything to go by. So they're engaging in these menstrual behaviors, the extreme everything with the face and the hair and the nails and the way we act, the way we perform. There's no guidance. So I do my best to try to put out reasonable content, realistic content, and I don't always get it right, but I'm just one voice. That's why I say we need more middle-aged women out here representing. And if you notice, almost every single time I give you what I look like on a regular basis, I don't come in fully made up. I mean, this is how I'm choosing to show up. It's not that I don't like getting glam. I like all that stuff too. But I just feel like we don't show any vulnerability to women. It's okay to be vulnerable. Not that you need to share all your business, but just come as you are and say, hey, let's talk about, I don't know, diet changes when you get to be 40 something. Like A few days ago, I can't even make this up. I called up a friend, I called up a couple people, and I was like, I think I'm having a heart attack. And they're like, well, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't know. Come to find out, it was like some extreme acid reflux or something. They were like, I need you to take some antacids, which I knew. And then like I was taking doing some other things. And then eventually over time it subsided. But I was like talking to my mother, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, am I having a heart attack? It was moving all over the place. She was like, yeah, that's that. And but that reflux, whatever, just little things. I don't know. The point I'm making is we don't talk about some normal stuff. You know, that's why I like to get out here and have my perspective and talk about regular things. But ultimately, we go back to what the original intent of this was. I was talking about career, the pros and cons of choosing career over when you're choosing motherhood. And I know people want to like live in the sky, have this pie in the sky notion, like, well, why do you have to choose? I'm like, the fact of the matter is, you kind of have to choose at a certain period of time. Where do you want to go? If you're choosing your career, do understand there's a sacrifice that comes with that. And the same thing goes with motherhood. If you wanted to have a career, but you want to have children, the fact of the matter is, for the vast majority of us to perform at the highest levels, something will have to be sacrificed at some point in time. And that's why my answer is, can we have it all? I say not at the same time. The answer is no. If you want to have kids, at some point you have to focus on the doings of the literal doings of, but like having the kids, which requires you to take time away. And it's tough. It is tough. I struggled. I was just like, oh my gosh. When I was a stay-at-home mom and people just kept referring to me as so-and-so's wife, it got next to me to the point that I was fussing at my husband. And it wasn't even his fault. I'm like, I'm so sick and tired of people calling me by your name. I was on a struggle bus. But all right, look, that's it for me. This is not like probably the most interesting conversation, but it needed to be had. So look, let me know what your thoughts are. Black opinionated woman out.